Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about why you should stop saying yes and how that opportunity is going to help you save your academic career or at least boost it a little bit more quickly. Now, what I really want to talk about is the people who are the most reliable, the ones everybody in the department knows, the one who's going to say yes, get the work done, do an excellent job, and is the most reliable person you can think of. But oftentimes, they're not the person who's rocketing off and taking over the world and getting international reputation and getting on every stage. And I want to talk about why. Now, for many people, this is going to feel like a stalled academic career. And oftentimes we'll say it's because of burnout. But really, oftentimes it's because they're frustrated or they feel stuck or they're overwhelmed. And we just assume they're doing too much, whether they need better boundaries. And I talk about better boundaries all the time. I think there's hardly anybody who doesn't need them. But sometimes we think they need a break. And while that may be true, it may just be that they're doing the wrong work. And the ones I really worry about are not the people who are burned out in a classic sense. They're still showing up, they're still delivering, they're still saying yes when you ask them to do those things. And the department absolutely functions better because they're there. They are trusted, they are respected. They're the person that every junior person knows they go to ask how things work, to figure out how to make something happen because they have figured that out. And they look successful. From the outside, there is no obvious problem to solve. But when you look closely, their careers are not moving forward in proportion to the effort that they're putting into things. And it's because so much of that work is going to things that aren't going to get them in any way known. These are not the things that are going to put them on the podium. They're not writing abstracts, they're not getting the grant done, but they are making sure that the paperwork's done for the fellowship, or they're making sure that the clinic runs effectively, that the MAs are happy. And it's not a motivation issue. It is not a resilience issue. Those are all misdiagnoses. It's that they feel invisible despite being indispensable. So, what's actually missing is not skill or commitment or productivity, it is selection. And it's what they're picking to spend their time on. And quite honestly, it's what we're asking them to spend their time on because we know they're valuable, we know they're dependable. And academic medicine trains us to execute beautifully. And really, it doesn't give us much about how to decide where to execute. Where do we say yes and where do we say no? Because there's definitely a period most of us were told at the beginning of our career, we should say yes to everything. And I don't think we think that anymore, but we did absolutely say that. And I know that I absolutely did that at the beginning. And our system does reward people who say yes, but it also relies on them to absorb all that complexity long term, almost indefinitely. And nobody teaches us when can we start shedding it? When can we start saying no? How do we figure out what to say no to? So that we can actually build the story and the narrative and the roles that get us towards promotion and authority and leadership and a long term sustainable career that hopefully we love. And they're simply told they're needed. These folks are absolutely loved by everybody and especially by people in leadership because they know they can rely on them. But every yes is a no to something that's probably going to move their career forward more significantly than the thing we're asking them to do. And when that selection is absent, these trade offs that are made implicitly take over instead of those deliberate choices that are made. And I know everybody's got the person in their department who is skyrocketing ahead, but very selective. They don't say yes to things very regularly. They're very selective in what they do. Almost everything they do is actually targeted towards their area of interest, their career research area, and they're very successful, but they're not the people that we actually love working with all the time because they don't say yes. And it's hard to get them to do the community work, but it's the reason they're able to skyrocket, right? And so there's probably some balance between the two where you say yes sometimes because service is required, but you don't say yes all the time, or else you don't get a chance to do the things that move your own career forward. And so I want to come back to a point I've made a few times before, which is that these academic promotion criteria really are about a narrative, about being able to tell a story where it makes sense how you got from A to B and B to C and why you're known for C or A or B, whichever one. But promotion committees do not have the tallying effort. They can't tell how hard you're working or that you are the person that holds together the clinic or you're the one who does every call schedule and does all the administrative work, unless that's one of your titles. But they're looking for coherence and trajectory and impact. They want to understand what you're known for, both inside and outside your institution, and how that work is built over time so that it makes sense, and why your contributions matter, especially beyond the institution. So, reliable faculty often have an impressive CV. They've done a ton of things, but they're usually a scattered assortment of things. They've been on this committee and that committee, but they aren't committees that necessarily make sense when you think about the trajectory of their career. And they've done a ton of work. You can see it in their CV, but there's almost no strategy. And you can't see where it's led them to being on stages or publishing papers or getting the grant. And so they look like people who haven't done the work. Now, psychologically, this is also reinforced early. Many physicians think that being helpful is akin to professionalism, and there's some truth to that. But saying yes, it's easy. It feels aligned. You're a good citizen. You're a good colleague. But those, opportunities are not always the things that are going to move you forward. So feeling disloyal when you say no to something can be hard, especially when those requests come from leadership. And honestly, our leadership also has to be thoughtful about are these things can help to move somebody forward? Because there are absolutely people who love doing the SOPs and the administrative work, and they're going to have a trajectory that makes sense that this is the administrative path they took. But if you're trying to be known for being the world's best left thumb doctor, and you're spending all your time on all these other things and not your left thumb research or your left thumb patients or the National Left Thumb Committee, then it's going to be hard for people to see where you're going and where you should be heading next and how you have an impact outside your institution. And these have compounding consequences because writing and grant development, national leadership all require this sustained protected effort. And when you continually sacrifice it for urgent institutional needs or the long term running of the department, which isn't necessarily your area where you want to be known for, your career can plateau quickly and quietly. And people often assume that the problem is their efficiency or their discipline or that burnout we talked about when it's actually the selection of where they spend their energy. So, what I want to talk about is opportunity selection as a career skill. So, what changes is not that we have to work any harder, but that we actually have to choose the opportunities that will tell the story that we want to tell and that will build the career that we want to build. And it takes discipline. It's hard to say no. You feel bad about it. We've been taught that we're supposed to say yes, especially if you're women, quite honestly. And it may feel hard in the moment, but strategic faculty can still contribute and they can still serve. They should just be doing it in the areas that make sense. And their yeses should be intentional. And some of that may be like if you ask me to be on the promotion committee, but I know that I really want to do curriculum development because I want an education career, then I can say, I'm appreciative of you asking me to do this leadership opportunity. I think, Stacey in the other room would love to do this, and this would help with her build her narrative. But if there's an opening on the curriculum committee, or if there's an education role that comes up, I would absolutely love to serve and I'd be happy to do that. And then do it when they ask you to do it. But also, you've given people an idea of who you are, who you want to be, and they can help you build exactly what you want to do next. And then each commitment builds depth, it builds visibility, it builds authority. And over time, your story and your narrative become clear. And people ask you to do things that fit that narrative because it's clear to everybody, locally, regionally, nationally, what you're doing. And this is not intuitive. We just don't teach it very often or very frequently. And so we feel like we're stagnating in our career when we've been doing a lot of things because we haven't selected the things and been intentional about the things that'll help us move forward so that our ideas are deliberate. So here's an example from my coaching business, and I see it a lot in mid-career faculty who have been passed over for a leadership role and who've been doing effective work for years and thought for sure that this work was going to lead to the role that they wanted. The woman I talked to had built a sustainable career. Everybody relied on her. They thought she was fantastic. She was mentoring trainees. She was smoothing conflict. She was absorbing administrative complexity so that others can focus on their work. But when she applied for that advancement, she was told that she didn't have a clear external profile, that she didn't have an area of impact, nothing about the feedback that reflected her actual contribution, but it was the view of her contribution, especially outside her division, where people couldn't see all that invisible work that held the department together, but didn't necessarily tell the story that she wanted to tell. And we worked to redesign those things. We helped put her in places where she could be doing projects, even if she couldn't be on the committee that she wanted to do. I don't know a single committee that isn't ecstatic to have somebody volunteer to help with the work. And she stepped away from some roles that did not move her to where she wanted to go anymore, or that she'd outgrown that other people could benefit from, but it didn't make sense for her. And she made sure that her scholarly work had her one word in them so that she was making sure everybody knew her niche and that there was an organizational focus. And there was a focus in terms of her leadership roles or committee roles or volunteerism outside the department. And I want you to tell you, if you're here as a department director or a division chief, these are things we underestimate. And part of it's because we need to get the work done and we know the people who are going to say yes and we rely on them. But it's important to make sure that what we're doing helps them move ahead in a way that's tangible and explainable and that tells the story so that we're not only relying on them, but we're giving them the gift of that clarity so that as they move ahead, we can actually help push them into the roles that they're looking for. And we don't want them to carry a disproportionate institutional weight without some kind of recognition or ability to move forward or some protection. And when they exit, it feels sudden. These are the people who are the stalwarts, and all of a sudden they're walking out the door and people are shocked. And it's because if you really looked at it more objectively, it was predictable when they had these unstrategic opportunities and they actually had to go somewhere else in order to start over and really focus on the things they wanted to do most. And we have the opportunity to give people the opportunity to do that in our own departments so that they don't have to leave. So don't wait for the system to solve this for you, or don't wait if you're seeing the faculty member who is floundering, because opportunity selection is a skill and it can be taught and it can be practiced immediately. So there's a few practical ways to start. Before saying yes, ask what this opportunity replaces. Be explicit about what you're giving up. I am not going to be doing this anymore, but I really want to do this. And then map whatever your goal is to the promotion criteria, but also to the skills that are needed to get there. So if you want to be working in an operational area and you have no operational experience, that's the next thing to work on, whether it's a project in your department, whether it's an institutional opportunity, or whether it's asking if you can be shadowing the operational people and working towards that, or being the associate of that role. And if you cannot articulate how it advances your next step in the roles you're doing, consider no longer doing it. And I want you to notice when opportunities build on each other. And if you can't see it in your own career, you can't envision it, look at somebody you admire who looks like they moved up quickly and see how those things stacked. And then get perspective before committing. So somebody asks you to do something, don't say yes or no right away if you don't know if it's a yes or no, but say, let me consider this, or let me think about this and get back to you. And then ask these questions. Does it get me where I want to go? Does it make sense for my narrative? Do I want to do it? Because everything doesn't have to fit your narrative, but you better be enjoying it if it's not getting you where you want to go. And remembering that every yes is a no to something else. So make sure you know what you are saying no to before you give the yes. Now, I want to tell you, for those of you who this is speaking to, who are the ones who are helpful, you're building the departments, you're doing the work, maybe without the title, is that being helpful does build departments, but it doesn't automatically build your career. Academic medicine does run on goodwill, but promotions run on strategy. So until your opportunity selection becomes explicit and intentional, the most reliable faculty will continue to carry the work that sustains the institution while their own advancement slows. So if you are the chair, the division chief, or the promotion committee right now, I want you to also help the folks when you're looking at their CV and you're saying, I know you're looking to do this in the next year or two, but here's where you look stalled. Here's what you need to do. These are the roles that would be useful. And then they can be intentional about where they need to go next. And for faculty, this means stopping that cycle of silent overcommitment, of saying yes to the things that you in the end don't want to do. One of the rules I loved was somebody told me if I say yes to something today in the future, but I wouldn't want to do it tomorrow, I should just say no. And it comes true whether it's like giving a talk or being on a committee or whatever the obligation may be. But understand that these are skills that you're going to build. These are not instincts. These were not taught to most of us, and they can develop faster when they're practiced along peers who understand the system. So for department chairs and dean's offices, this is a systems problem, not an individual one. The departments can reduce risk when they invest in intentional onboarding and make promotional criteria interpretable through regular promotion readiness meetings. In addition, if you have some structured department level coaching, that can help faculty choose roles that strategically fit instead of picking ones that they have selected by default or have been selected for them. And when opportunity selection becomes part of the culture, reliability stops being a liability and starts becoming a strength again. Now, if you're a faculty member who wants to learn more about this, please talk to your division chief or your chair or your promotion committee. And if you're a dean or a department chair and you want to talk about how to integrate more of this in your department, this is exactly the kind of stuff we do to reduce burnout and reduce retention risk in our Faculty Excellence and Retention Initiative known as the FAIRY program. Thank you all for joining me. If this was useful, please forward this to a colleague or a friend. And please do follow us wherever you are watching or hearing this so that we can continue bringing this great information and getting our word out there. Thanks so much. I look forward to talking to you next week.